I'm sorry, I really am. But sometimes, to protect innocence, innocents have to die. Welcome to Legends, a series that delves into the lore within Horizon Zero Dawn, a world with an abundance of powerful and moving history begging to be explored. Today, we examine the man behind the worst catastrophe to ever befall mankind. One of the most pivotal and divisive figures in all of Horizon, Ted Faro. A trailblazer, captain of industry, hero, and villain. Theodore Faro was born in Salt Lake City, Utah, December 24th, 2013. After graduating high school, he enrolled at the University of California, Los Angeles, with a focus on business. But in 2033, he would drop out of UCLA to start the entrepreneurial endeavor that would eventually make him the world's first trillionaire. This, however, would not happen overnight. Though they developed promising robot prototypes, the early years of Faro Automated Solutions saw them fail to make inroads into markets that were dominated by industry giants like General Synthetics and Recorp. But Faro proved to be a savvy businessman, seeing opportunity for success in the shifting political landscape. The 2030s would prove to be an incredibly strenuous time the world over. The globe was gripped in a climate crisis the likes it had never seen before. Rising sea levels had submerged the entirety of New Zealand, and many small islands along with it. Far more land must have been submerged as well, as accounts of the day would place the death toll in the billions, a time the world would come to know as the Great Die-Off. Those who survived this unfathomable catastrophe became refugees, millions who needed food, shelter, and safety. The leaders of the world were forced to react, creating timely but unsustainable solutions. Solutions that unfortunately would lead to even more tragedy. For over a decade, these refugees would remain just that, residing in emergency relocation facilities that were woefully unsupplied. These unbearable living conditions would lead to turmoil and mass unrest. In 2033, the suburb of Thamesmead in South London erupted in an uprising of the disenfranchised that turned into a slaughter of innocents, as thousands were killed by a panicked power structure, leaving even more blood on the hands of the establishment. Some found humanity guilty for the woes of the world and would see to it that we were punished for what we had done to Father Globe. Seeking to slaw the filth from the world, in 2039, bioterrorist Margaret Choi of the Naysay Doomsday cult engineered a viral cocktail that would ravage Moscow, London, Shanghai, and New York, hoping to heal the world through the purge of mankind. Through this chaos, Ted Faro seized his moment. 1 year prior, in 2038, Faro debuted his Alfred line of levitating personal servitors and bodyguard bots. In these uncertain times, supplying peace of mind to the public saw Faro Automated Solutions propel itself into the top 50 most fiscally successful corporations in the United States. But this would only be the tip of the iceberg for FAS. In the year 2040, a brilliant young doctor would join the ranks of Faro Automated Solutions as a junior scientist, who would begin a new era of progress and success for the company that could have never been imagined. Her name? Elizabeth Sobek. At only 22 years of age, her remarkable intellect and vision could not be denied, a meteoric rise that would see her become Faro's chief scientist only after 2 years with the company. With Dr. Sobek at the helm, Faro became the world leader in green robots, who played a pivotal role in realizing successful environmental cleanup and detoxification efforts to counter the world's climate crisis. The 2040s would become known as the clawback decade, as these achievements fought to bring the world's climate back to normal. In the 8 years Dr. Sobek's vision steered FAS, profits for the company tripled. A worldwide approval rating for the company exceeded 90%. Across media and social networks, Ted Faro was hailed as the man who saved the world. As wildly successful as Ted Faro had become, his relentless ambition continued, and the next era of FAS would prove to be a divisive one. 2048 would see Faro move his company's focus away from green robotics and towards automated military technologies. By 2045, the US military was already moving drastically towards automated fighting forces over human combatants. Accounts citing that the Air Force by that time was already 60 to 70% automated. This was a wave Ted Faro knew could elevate his company to even greater heights. Elizabeth, however, was so adamantly against this move away from green robotics, she resigned her position in protest. Though Dr. Sobek may have held the moral high ground, this move towards cutting-edge combat machine manufacturing would prove Ted right, eventually cementing Faro Automated Solutions as the wealthiest corporation in the world. The corporation would break records for market capitalization with a worth of over $23 trillion, but the beast would grow even larger. By 2055, FAS would hold contracts with 353 nations, transgovernmental organizations, and corporate identities, controlling 61% of the world market for automated military platforms, exceeding his second-place competition by a staggering 321%. With this, Ted Faro had become the most famous businessman in the world, a major voice in politics, culture, and political affairs. All of this, however, was only prologue to the next staggering leap in technology that FAS would take: the Chariot line. The most advanced peacekeeping robots the world had ever seen were made available to the highest bidders. The brainchild of Ted Faro, he created an unstoppable fighting force that could not only learn and adapt after each engagement, but have the capability to repair and self-replicate in the field when deemed necessary. Equipped with the ability to consume and transform any organic material into biofuel and practically unhackable software that made them impenetrable to any who would seek to divert them from their purpose. At the time, they were Faro's greatest triumph. As Chariot Line Replications engineer Brad Andak aptly put it, there were no limits. These choices, the illusion of ultimate control and dominance, would ultimately lead to a tragedy beyond any the human race had ever endured. In October 2064, Ted Faro reached out to his estranged former chief scientist to discuss a glitch that had occurred within a portion of the Chariot line. The swarm belonging to the Heart's Timor Energy Combine had stopped responding to commands and had begun attacking personnel. Upon trying to patch the problem, Faro was reminded that he had instructed his engineers that his machines needed to be impossible to hack. At this moment, Dr. Sobek illustrated to Faro the incomprehensible damage his choices were about to bring upon the people of the world. The swarm was now its own master, and to fuel themselves, they had prioritized their biomatter conversion protocols, making all organic matter on the planet the prime target for the robotic plague to come. The estimated timetable for total extinction? A little over a year. Faro, horrified by Dr. Sobek's findings, agreed to fund any countermeasure she proposed in hopes of reversing the damage he had done. Unfortunately, for the people of the 21st century, there would be no coming back from this. Elizabeth knew this, and instead of trying to preserve the present, she turned her focus to ensuring life had a future. She came back to Faro with a plan, a fully automated terraforming system that would eventually brute force deactivation codes upon the swarm and allow life a second chance on a sterile planet. At first, Faro was against this concept, not wanting to admit there was no hope for the world he had come to know, but when Elizabeth threatened leaking the truth concerning his robots, Ted complied, footing the bill for the entirety of what would come to be known as Project Zero Dawn. As Operation Enduring Victory battled for every second to buy as much time for Zero Dawn, personnel worked around the clock to see to its completion. During this time, Ted often checked in with Elizabeth as to the progress of the systems. This was usually unwelcome and met with hostility by Elizabeth. During one of these heated meetings, Faro insisted on installing a kill switch within Gaia in hopes of ensuring that what happened with the Chariot line would not be repeated with Zero Dawn. Even though Elizabeth was fervently against this, Gaia herself felt this to be a necessary precaution as well, and thus it was done. Zero Day, the day all life ceased to exist on Earth, had arrived. Only 36 hours before had Project Zero Dawn been locked down, but not without its own costs. A port seal had malfunctioned, meaning that the swarm would be able to detect the facility if not completely shut. This could only be completed from the outside. Elizabeth sacrificed herself to achieve this end. As her team mourned her loss, there was no longer a buffer between Ted and the Alphas of Project Zero Dawn. Isolated in his own hermetically sealed bunker, his mental state began to deteriorate as he began harassing all those left within the Gaia Prime facility. He became obsessed with the future of the next generation of humanity and what the knowledge of the past could potentially cause. Then one day, by hologram, he summoned all the Alphas residing in the Gaia Prime facility to his control room. He then revealed what he had done. Using a secret level of clearance, he had made the executive decision to wipe Apollo, the vast archive of human history and knowledge from all Zero Dawn facilities. He felt this knowledge to be a disease that would only doom those who would come after them. To ensure this choice could not be undone, Faro executed the order to remove all oxygen from the sealed room, suffocating all of Elizabeth's team. This was the last known documented appearance of Ted Faro. This purge of Apollo and the murder of the Zero Dawn Alphas would cause irreparable harm within the system. Other subfunctions such as Eleuthia and Artemis would never see their true potential realized and leave the population of this new world with no answers to where they came from. As to the fate of Ted Faro, no one knows for sure. He most likely lived out the rest of his natural life in his bunker, Thebes. Or perhaps his story may have another chapter that is yet to be revealed. But that is a legend for another time. And with that, our journey comes to an end. If you'd like to see more content like this, likes and shares are always appreciated. And if you really like our stuff, subscribe away. The idea for today's video came from one of you, our awesome subscribers. So if you have a great idea for our next episode of Legends, let us know in the comments down below. And until next time, thanks for watching and keep questing.